On paper, the Durston X-Dome 1 Plus is perfect. I've got the internal space to put my pack and all my bits and bobs and a little bit of room to kind of live in. And then I've got myself a little bit of a vestibule. So on paper, absolutely perfect. However, that being said, I can only describe my experience of the first camp with the Durston the other day as gutting. I was genuinely gutted. So there were two issues. One was that it was incredibly noisy. It sounded like I had a little tiny helicopter flying around my head all night, but with the noise of a normal size helicopter. And the second issue I had was on the back wall, half of it was suffering from extreme condensation. And on closer inspection, what I found was the right hand side of the back wall was around about an inch away. So the inner and the outer were around about an inch away. And on the left hand side, there was around about 3 inches. Most tents usually have around about 3 inches, so that's pretty standard. What I was finding is on the right hand side, the mesh inner was touching the outer, taking the condensation that was on the outer off, which was then kind of clinging to the mesh, and then as it was flapping in the wind, it was basically just sprinkling rain on me, like really fine rain all night. So I ended up with a pretty wet sleeping bag. Not absolutely drenched, you know, because it was just condensation, but it was pretty wet. So in the morning I took a look and I could see exactly what the issue was, and it absolutely blew my mind. I couldn't understand why it was designed this way. So I put it down essentially to it being a manufacturing defect. Now I did contact Durston and they came back about 4 or 5 days later and they said that it's actually by design, it's not a defect. I am still of the opinion that that just can't be true, because this is just a ridiculous design if it is true. I do get the impression that they didn't fully understand what my issue was, so I'm hoping that it is a defect and that was the case, they didn't understand. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the tent up now, put it in fast forward just so you can watch it getting built, and I'll show you some little modifications that I've made. Now I've seen a few modifications similar to this, but this one actually just seems to be the simplest and actually the most useful. I'll show you the issue, I'll explain how it causes the problem, and if it is by design, I'll explain why they've done it. Right, so I'm going to set the tent up here. It's really hard ground because it's been baking in the sun for the last week or so, and I've just noticed that there's some fresh dog shit there, which hasn't made me very happy, because the chances are I'm going to get a little bit of that on my tent. I just had to move the camera back a little tiny bit because it's perilously close to that dog shit. So on the back wall there, if we look at the left hand side and the right hand side, we can see that there is more of a gap on this side, about this much between the fly and the inner, and on this side it literally just touches without any kind of, I mean, just literally just resting there allows it to touch. You can see, if I just bring it up here, if you see the top there, you can see the gap between the two. It's fairly large, and if I bring it round here, it's just touching. So with the slightest, so there's a little tiny bit of wind now, and it is literally touching there. Whereas on this side, exactly the same wind, there's a massive gap, there's no touching. So on the side that touches, we have got a really relatively small amount of kind of cord from the inner, and as you can see here, there's almost no gap, and that lack of gap continues all of the way up. Now if I bring you around to the other side, we can see that it's almost twice the length. So as you can see, there's a massive amount of gap here because of the length of this, and then and as we come onto this side, because this is so short, there's almost no gap. So I could pull this out and create a little tiny bit more of a gap, but obviously if I come onto this side, I can do exactly the same here. and that creates even more of a gap. So no matter how I set this tent up, there's always going to be a massive imbalance between the left and right hand side. So if you look at the diagram here that's on the Durston website, it shows that there's an equal gap on each of the back corners, but the reality is actually more like this, where you can see that it's much closer on the right hand side and it creates this kind of skew defect. Now the obvious downside here is that, as you can see here, it's touching the outer fly and causes condensation issues. This is at its default, where basically this isn't tensioned at all, but this is as far out as it can go. As you can see, the more I try to pull this out, the closer this gets. The way you can offset that, tensioning this as much as you can. Now, luckily I'm in a position where I can do that, so I'm going to tension it absolutely as much as it can do. Now that's created a reasonable amount of gap between the inner and the outer there. However, when I come onto this side, if I do exactly the same, I'm going to tension it by maybe 1 inch there. Now the inner and the outer now are both matched, but I've literally got all of this room to tension this even more. Right, so now this side has at least 2 inches more of a gap between the inner and the outer as that side, and that side is at its maximum, and this side still has an extra 2 inches to go. So the only reason why I could imagine that they would do that is to allow for more vestibule space. Essentially, by removing 2 inches of the kind of gap between the inner and the outer there, you're kind of getting yourself 2 inches here. So as I just showed you outside, tension in that corner has increased the kind of gap between the inner and the outer by maybe another 2 inches, but it's still 2 inches less on that side than it is on that side. All it would have taken is for the strap on both sides to be exactly the same length, so that there is a consistent gap between the inner and the outer. Because I'm in a park now, it's reasonably flat. When I was on the mountain the other night, I couldn't really adjust any more than I'd adjusted. This was literally touching constantly. Had it just been a uniform gap at the back, 3 inches, 4 inches between the inner and the outer, I wouldn't have had the issue. I actually had to use the track and pull option to try and pull the outer away, and even that wasn't enough. Essentially, there was pretty much a line here going all the way across where this was just covered in condensation and it was just sprinkling down on me. The thing with wild camping is you don't always have the luxury of being able to peg things out and to kind of tension things exactly how you want. The fact is that this tent is always going to be at a disadvantage on this half of the tent, and I just really struggle to understand why that would have been put in when it's completely avoidable. So while I'm here, I'll just show you the modifications that I've made on this. So by default, these two are completely separate. So there's the inner and there's the outer. And essentially what happens is the pole goes through both of these at the same time and keeps them both in place. So what I'm doing is I'm using something called a lark head knot. So basically what I've done is I've created a hoop like so. Come back, you. So what I do is line both of these two up, get the hoop, push it through like that, and then get the knotted area and tie that through here. Very hard to do when I'm holding it like this. Right, and then you pull it through like this. So this is called a lark head hitch or knot. And essentially what this does is when you bring it together now, these two are completely together and they're also wanting to kind of stay flat like that. And then you've got this hoop and you can then use this to stake it down. Now, most people are tying these together in a way that means that you can't easily separate the inner from the outer. So the beauty of lark's head knots are that they are really, really easy to undo and to put together. So all you do is you just grab this little fold here and then you just do that. And now the whole thing has just come off. Really, really simple. So in a couple of weeks' time, I'm going to get a couple of camps done in this tent and then I'll be able to put together a review video. And hopefully by that point, I'll know whether this is a design feature or whether it's a fault. I'm hoping that it's a fault, but to be honest, if it is a feature, I'm going to modify it to fix it myself. It's not that hard to do. Don't believe I should have to. So if you own one of these tents, let me know whether you've experienced this issue before or whether yours is actually the same or not. If you have experienced the same issue, then hopefully I'll be getting a yes or no answer off Durston soon. And if it turns out that it is a design feature, then I'll be fixing that feature because I think it's a design fault, to be honest, rather than a feature. But I'll do a video of that just so that I can help other people out if they're having the same issues. So if you've enjoyed this content, please do consider subscribing. As I say, I'll be doing the full review of this tent soon, and I'm always putting videos up with gear reviews and little adventures of me wild camps and scrambles and things like that. I'll be honest, I think I put together some half decent content, so I'm definitely worthy of a sub. So take a look at my other videos and subscribe, you bastard. I'll see you later.